Don't forget to subscribe if you make it through the night. It happened in late November, just outside of Reno, Nevada. I was driving home after visiting my girlfriend, who lived 2 towns over. The roads were nearly empty, just long stretches of cracked highway cutting through flat, dark desert. It was around 1:47 a.m. when I realized I hadn't passed another car in nearly 20 minutes. There's something weird about driving at that hour. You start to feel like you're the only person left alive. The hum of the tires, the occasional sign whipping by, the faint sound of wind pressing against the windows. It all blends into a kind of hypnotic silence. And then, suddenly, it broke. It started with movement in my rearview mirror, something darting across the road behind me. At first, I thought it was an animal, a coyote maybe. But then I realized whatever it was running upright. I remember gripping the wheel a little tighter, my heart thudding once, hard. The lights from my taillights barely reached more than 30 feet back, and in that red haze I thought I saw a silhouette. Tall, too tall, arms hanging low. It moved with a strange, jerky rhythm, like someone running on uneven legs. I tapped the brakes to get a better look, but when I slowed down, it was gone. For the next few minutes, I tried to tell myself I was just tired, my eyes playing tricks on me after hours on the road. I turned the radio up, but even the DJ's voice sounded distorted, distant. Then I saw it again. This time, it wasn't behind me. It was on the side of the road, pacing the desert scrub, keeping up with my car. I swear to God, it was matching my speed. I pushed to 60, then 70, but the figure moved faster, darting between patches of darkness like it was made of shadow itself. It didn't make sense. No human could run like that. Not that fast. Not in complete darkness. I slammed my foot down and sped up to 85. My hands were slick with sweat, and I could barely keep the wheel steady. I didn't want to look anymore. Every instinct screamed not to, but curiosity burned through the fear. I turned my head slightly toward the window and saw a face keeping pace with me. It was pale, featureless except for 2 hollow eye sockets. It wasn't breathing, wasn't blinking, just watching me. Its mouth hung open, wide and empty, stretching farther than it should have been able to. Like it was smiling. I screamed and swerved across the lane. My tires hit the rumble strip, and the whole car jolted. When I looked again, it was gone. For the rest of the drive, I didn't see another sign of it, but I could feel something following, like a weight pressing down on my chest. I refused to look at the mirrors. I just kept driving, praying for the lights of my town to appear on the horizon. When I finally reached home, it was 2:33 a.m. I parked, shut the door, and stood in my driveway, trying to convince myself I'd imagined everything. The air was still. The desert was quiet again. No wind, no movement, just the faint ticking of my car's cooling engine. Then, from somewhere far off down the road, I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, getting closer. I ran inside, locked every door and window, and sat in my living room with the lights off. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every time the house creaked or the wind shifted, I felt that same pressure in my chest, that same feeling of being watched. When morning came, I finally convinced myself to go outside. My car was fine. Nothing damaged, nothing strange. But when I walked around to the passenger side, I froze. There was a handprint on the window. Long fingers, too long, and the glass wasn't fogged or smeared with dirt. It was burned, like someone had pressed something hot and chemical against it. I still have that car, though I don't drive it much anymore. Every time I pass that stretch of highway, I can't help but stare at the empty desert, half expecting to see that thing again, sprinting alongside, waiting to catch up. A few weeks later, I looked up stories online. Turns out that road, State Route 34, has a history. People report shadow runners, pale figures that chase cars late at night, only to vanish when the headlights hit them. Truckers talk about hearing tapping on their windows, or seeing faces in the glass when they're alone on the road. I don't know what I saw. Maybe exhaustion, maybe something else. But one thing's for sure. When you drive through the desert at night, never slow down, because something might be keeping pace with you. And if you stop, it finally catches up. If you're hearing this at night, maybe you should close your blinds first. I used to live in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Portland. One of those cookie-cutter communities where everyone knows each other just enough to smile and wave, but not enough to actually care. It was the kind of place where nothing bad was supposed to happen. Until I moved in next to him. His name was Mark, or at least, that's what he told people. He lived alone in a single-story house across from mine. Mid-40s, thin, pale, with the kind of stare that made your skin crawl if he held it too long. I remember the first time I saw him. It was my second night after moving in. Around 2 a.m., I looked out my window and saw him standing in his driveway. Just standing there. No phone, no smoke, no movement. Just facing my house. Watching. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe insomnia. Maybe he liked late-night air. But as days turned into weeks, I noticed something strange. Mark never slept. I come home from late shifts, sometimes past midnight, and his lights were always on. The glow of his living room spilled out onto the lawn, like a stage light. Sometimes, I'd see his shadow moving slowly back and forth. Once, I saw him sitting completely still in his recliner, just staring at the wall for hours. The weirdest part was that nobody else seemed to notice. The other neighbors said he was quiet but harmless. One old lady even said, "He's been here longer than anyone. You get used to him." Except, no one really remembered when he moved in. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I was up late watching TV, and something, maybe instinct, made me glance out the window. Mark's lights were on, as usual, but this time, his front door was open. From where I stood, I could see straight into his living room. There was nothing inside. No furniture, no decor, nothing. Just him, standing in the center of the empty room, staring directly at my window. I ducked down so fast I hit my knee on the coffee table. My heart was hammering in my throat. After a few seconds, I peeked again, and the door was closed. The lights were off. For the first time since I'd moved there, his house went completely dark. The next morning, I told myself I'd imagined it. But when I went out to get the mail, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Footprints. Barefoot prints in the dew-covered grass, leading from his house straight to my front yard and stopping right beneath my window. I called the police that afternoon, said I thought my neighbor might be trespassing. They came by, knocked on his door, but no one answered. The officer shrugged and said the house was empty. No furniture, no utilities even connected. "Looks abandoned," he said. "Probably squatter rumors." But that didn't make sense. I saw him every night, and that night I saw him again. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to a faint tapping sound. Tap, tap, tap. At first, I thought it was tree branches. But when I opened my eyes, I realized the sound was coming from inside my house. I froze. The tapping continued, slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway. My breath caught in my throat. I reached for my phone, trying not to make a sound. The moment I lit the screen, the tapping stopped. Silence. I strained to listen, barely daring to breathe. Then, from the end of the hall, I heard it, a quiet, almost playful whisper. "Are you awake?" I dropped my phone. When I finally worked up the courage to move, I flicked on every light I could and checked the entire house. Nothing. Doors locked, windows shut. But I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I just sat on the couch, staring at my front door. The next morning, I noticed something taped to my door. A small, yellow sticky note. Written in thin, shaky handwriting were 4 words. "I saw you too." That was it. I didn't care what it meant. I packed a bag, called in sick to work, and drove to a friend's house across town. I didn't go back home for 3 days. When I finally did, I brought 2 friends with me. Mark's house was still there, quiet, dark. But this time, the front door was wide open again. We called out, stepped inside carefully, and what we found still haunts me. There was no furniture, just dust, rotted floorboards, and a smell like old rain. But there were pictures, hundreds of them, pinned to the walls, scattered across the floor, stacked in piles. All of the houses on the street, every house. But every single photo was taken at night, and every one of them had the same detail. In each photo, through a window, you could see someone sleeping. When I found my house in the photos, I nearly threw up. There were dozens, shots of my bedroom, my living room, me sitting on my couch. But in one of them, There was a second figure standing behind me, tall and pale, with a face blurred like fog. We called the cops again, but when they searched, they found nothing. The photos were gone. They said the house was abandoned for years, that the electricity wasn't even hooked up, but the neighbors swore they'd seen lights too. I moved out within a week. Never looked back. That was 6 months ago. But last night, I woke up at 2:53 a.m. in my new apartment, miles away from that neighborhood. I got up to grab a drink, and as I walked past the window, something caught my eye. Across the street, in the reflection of the glass, I saw a man standing under a flickering streetlight, pale, motionless, just staring up at my window. I shut the curtains and haven't opened them since. If you ever move into a quiet neighborhood and notice that one house where the lights never go out, don't look too long. Some people don't sleep because they're afraid of the dark. Others don't sleep because the dark is afraid of them. You're still here? Guess you don't value sleep that much. I moved into the Waverly Apartments last spring, a decent complex on the edge of Seattle. Nothing fancy, but quiet enough. The kind of place where you could hear the hum of the vending machines at night and the occasional siren in the distance. My unit was 9A, right across from 9B. I never met whoever lived there, but from the day I moved in, I knew something was off about that apartment. The blinds were always drawn, even during the day, and every night, around 3 a.m., I'd hear something coming from inside. At first, it was faint, muffled thuds, the creak of floorboards, the sound of pacing. I figured someone was just restless, but after a week, it changed. The pacing turned into scratching, and then came the screaming. It started one Thursday night. I was half asleep when I heard it, a low, broken scream that sounded like someone was trying to hold it in. It was raw, like pain mixed with terror. I froze, listening. The sound came again, longer this time, and unmistakably human. I jumped up, heart pounding, and ran to the hallway. The sound was coming from 9B, directly across from me. I hesitated, then knocked on their door. "Hello? Are you okay in there?" No response. I knocked again, harder. "I'm calling for help if you don't answer." The screaming stopped instantly. Just silence. After a moment, I backed away. Maybe they were gone. Maybe I imagined it. But then I realized something that made my stomach twist. The peephole on their door was glowing faintly red, like someone was watching me from the other side. I went back into my apartment and locked the door. Didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I told the landlord. He sighed like he heard it before. "Yeah, 9B's been empty for months," he said. "Tenant disappeared last year. Police cleared it. Maybe the pipes are acting up again." The pipes? I thought he was joking. But when I went back upstairs, the hallway smelled faintly like bleach. And on the floor outside 9B, there was a dark stain that trailed toward the elevator. That night, I tried to ignore it. I put on headphones, blasted white noise. But around 3 a.m., the scream started again, louder this time. Not just one voice. Two. I ripped off my headphones, shaking. It sounded like a man shouting, muffled, pleading, and then a woman crying, begging him to stop. The walls trembled. I could hear things breaking. I called 911. The dispatcher said officers were on their way. But before they arrived, the sound stopped again, dead silent. When the cops came, they found nothing. The apartment was locked, no signs of forced entry, no one inside. But they said something odd. All the furniture was covered with sheets, except for one chair facing the wall, with a single tape recorder on the floor next to it. They took the recorder as evidence. The next day, I asked the landlord about it. He looked pale. Said the previous tenant, a man named Elliot Vance, used to record sleep experiments. Said he believed there were voices that spoke only between 3 and 4 a.m. if you stayed perfectly still in total darkness. The last night anyone saw him, he was screaming about the ones in the walls. I wanted to move out right then, but I didn't. Curiosity is a dangerous thing. That night, I sat on my couch, staring at 9B's door through the peephole. Nothing moved. No sound. Midnight passed. Then 1. Then 2. At 2:59 a.m., the lights in the hallway flickered, once, twice, and the air turned freezing cold. From behind the door of 9B, I heard the click of a tape recorder starting. Then came a man's voice. Calm. Shaky. If anyone hears this, don't answer them. Don't talk back. They sound like you, but they're not you. Static followed. Then faintly. Please open the door. My blood ran cold. Someone knocked from the other side. Soft, polite, like a neighbor asking for sugar. I whispered, "Who is it?" A pause. Then, in a voice that sounded exactly like mine, came the reply. "It's me." I backed away, my heart slamming so hard I could hear it in my ears. The knocking turned to pounding. "Let me in," it shouted. "I can't stay out here." The voice was mine, every inflection, every tone, but full of anger. Desperate, I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and tried to call for help, but my signal dropped to 0. Then, from behind me, I heard another voice whisper, my real voice, trembling. "Don't open it." I spun around, but there was no one there. When I looked back at the door, the peephole glowed again, but this time, I could see an eye staring through. Not human. Too wide, too still. The door handle started to rattle. I screamed, stumbled backward, and ran into my bedroom. Slammed the door. Sat in the dark, holding my phone, praying for morning. I must have passed out eventually, because when I woke up, the sun was out and everything was quiet again. I told myself it was a dream, hallucination, lack of sleep, until I saw something on my living room floor. A cassette tape. No label. Just black plastic. I picked it up, and in shaky handwriting on the back, there were 2 words. "Your turn." I don't live there anymore. In fact, the entire Waverly complex was condemned 3 months later after several structural complaints. But sometimes, late at night, I still wake up at exactly 3 a.m., and somewhere, faintly, beneath the hum of my own breathing, I hear it again, the sound of a tape recorder clicking on. Then a voice, my voice, whispering through the dark, "Please open the door."